Today we're talking about U.S. progress metrics, and you can't really talk about U.S. progress metrics until we have dealt with UX outcomes, which we talked about on Monday, and UX success metrics, which we talked about yesterday, because progress metrics are about the progress we are making, the distance we are traveling. They answer the question, how far have we come, and how far do we have left to go? This is how we're going to report status, right? Our UX outcomes were there to help us set the stage. The success metrics were to delineate exactly what we were trying to achieve. And now the progress metrics are how we're moving forward. Now, I started the other day talking about how sales does their metrics. And the reason I keep bringing up sales metrics is because the purpose of these metrics is to communicate to the rest of the organization how we are getting the organization to achieve its goals. And sales does this, in most organizations, does this very well. They have to survive, because the entire organization is focused on sales activities, right? Everybody is doing everything they can to make sure sales can sell things. And in order to know how to help, they have to know how the progress that sales is making. So sales puts together this really elaborate, the sales management puts together this really elaborate story that they tell, and they tell the story of how they're doing. Now, the thing about this is that it starts with their goal, right? Their success metric. So for sales, the success metric is going to be some goal. Let's say it's we want to sell 250 million this fiscal year, right? So that's the goal. And by the way, where does that goal come from? It is completely arbitrary, right? They picked a number. Now, it may not be completely arbitrary. It might be that last year they sold 200 million, so they've picked a 25% increase. Maybe they picked a 10% increase. But again, that increase, where'd that come from? It was completely arbitrary. Or maybe it's not that arbitrary, because the finance has a goal. Finance has a goal of having enough profit in order to have a certain cash reserve in the bank. Okay. And so the sales number isn't arbitrary, because it's based on that profit that they need for the cash reserve. Okay, that's fine. Where did they get to the profit for the cash reserve? That was arbitrary. At some level, it's arbitrary. And so don't feel so bad if your goal feels a little arbitrary, if your success metric feels arbitrary, because everybody's is arbitrary. It's a reach goal. It's about trying to grow the capability of the organization. It's about trying to be more more. It's really just trying to be more, right? It's trying to be better. Okay. But today we're talking about progress metrics. So how does the sales team handle progress? Well, in order to get to that 250 million, they need to report how many sales they've had before. So at some level, there's a metric of current closed sales. And those are the sales that are right now. Those are the sales that have been closed, that have been invoiced, that money is moving and will eventually end up in the bank account. That's a key number. And at some point, it reaches the target of 250 million. That's their party moment. Now, but in order to get to close sales, you have to have book sales. And in order to get to book sales, you have to have actively, maybe you have to put out proposals, right? And you're putting out sales proposals, and they equal a certain amount of money, as do the book sales. as do the closed sales, right? And in order to get to proposals, you have to have some sort of serious sales calls where you're figuring out what the proposal needs to have in it. And to get to serious sales calls, you have to have sales interest calls. Now, these probably aren't measured in money. These are probably just measured in quantity, right? There's some quantity here that they're sort of reporting on. And then to get to interest calls, you have to have sales leads. Right? So this is known as the sales funnel. And they report each of these things as metrics. And they have goals for each of these things. And as they reach each of those goals, that's the sales funnel. Right? This is a set of progress metrics. That's what we're talking about. Is having this progression of things that we can say, as these numbers go up, we are making progress to our overall success metric. And we can show management how far we've come, how far we have to go. And keep in mind that this is a marathon. When we are talking about UX, persuasive UX metrics, we are on the sort of marathon scale, right? This isn't just a quick jog. This is a marathon with a finish line. Our success metric is the moment we cross that finish line. For sales, the success metric, they cross the finish line when they hit $250 million in the current fiscal year, right? So that's that. Progress metrics are the milestones that happen. And for sales, they have a funnel. So they think of it as a funnel, and a certain number of leads have to come into the funnel, and then a certain number of interest calls have to happen, and then a certain number of sales calls have to happen, and then they have to get so many proposals out, and each of these things there. Now, the numbers are going to get smaller and smaller, the quantity numbers. That's why they think of it as a funnel, because people are going to drop out. There are people who aren't interested. There are people who won't get approvals. There, all of that sort of thing. People who buy other people's products. So, but these are the milestones, and they eventually end up with success, where we have our party. So when we're thinking of success, or we're thinking of progress, we need to think in terms of these things. This is how this all works. And so the process that we're talking about here is one of sort of establishing what that is. Now, sales can establish it really easily because they've just done it so many times. And this is, there's an old saying, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgments. Right? The fact is that they have just done this enough times, and they've shown it to management. And if they get pushback, they realize they've done it wrong, and they go and they fix it and they get it better. But the thing to remember are persuasive UX metrics. These are for the executive leadership, for the key stakeholders, right? And so our outcome, our UX outcome, is what we use to show the executive leadership and the key stakeholders where we want the organization as a whole to go, right? We are setting the UX strategy for the organization. That's what we're doing here. That's what our process is. So we are showing where the organization needs to be in order to work on the to deliver better products and services, right? And so this idea is saying, okay, as an organization, if we do a good job on this, how are we going to make someone's life better? And we put this in terms of humans, right? Whose life are we improving? How are we making their life better? That's what we're focused on. The success metric, that's what we did yesterday. The success metric shows the team exactly how we're going to determine that we've achieved our outcome, right? So we take the outcome, which is a bit amorphous, and we put some definition to it in the success metric. And really, this is a preemptive moment, right? We do this to shut down debate so that nobody can claim, well, we've gotten there. We made people's lives better. Can't you see? They're happy, right? No, we're going to define how we as an organization are going to see that we've made people's lives better. What is the evidence that we are going to collect and use as observation to make sure that we all can see at the same time that we have achieved this? And we do that by getting buy-in up front for our success metric. We say, this is how we're going to tell. So we have to get buy-in for the outcome. Once we get buy-in for the outcome, we say, okay, this is how we're going to measure this. This is not the instrument. This is not the instrument we're going to use to measure it. This is what we're going to see in the world, the moment the change happens. Now, remember, success metrics are binary. They're either no or yes, right? So the success metric, when we're talking about the marathon, is a binary thing, right? We haven't achieved it. 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 Oh, look, we achieved it, right? That's the moment. So success metrics are binary, but binary is not good enough for management. Management doesn't like knowing it'll happen someday, just wait. That's not something you can tell them. So in order to make this work, we need to have a way to show ongoing process. It's just like what sales is doing, right? Sales may have closed 0 sales, but they have a story to tell. If they can talk about the leads they've gotten, if they can talk about how they've shown interest in those leads, if they can talk about the proposals they've put out, if they talk about the book sales they've made, they have a story to tell. So the entire purpose of progress metrics is to tell a story. It's to tell the story of how far we've gone and where we're trying to go. And we use this all the way through, right? Remember, think of this as we're getting in the car and we're going to Disney World. And we need to explain to everybody in the car how close we are. We need to have some way of doing that. And we have to tell whether we're on schedule or not. So we're going to set up arbitrary goals. We're going to say, you know what? Starting in Boston, heading to Florida, by tonight, we should be in New Jersey. By tomorrow, we should be in South Carolina. And then on the day after tomorrow, on Friday, we're going to be in Florida. We will be at Disney World, right? So we are answering the "are we there yet" question, right? And but we want to establish it up front so that they don't even have to ask, because they can see the progress that's happening, because we've created the scale by which they can measure what's going on. That's what progress metrics are all about. We are basically laying out our literal roadmap of where we are going so they can see the progress. This may not be the product roadmap. This is the progress roadmap for our UX outcome. Now, remember this. This is not the progress metrics, the success metrics, the UX outcomes. They are not just for the UX team. They are not showing what the UX team's contributions are. They are not measuring the UX team's efforts. That's not what this is. We are measuring the entire organization's effort to deliver better user experiences. This is something that this is one of the ways we move from being reactive to proactive, right? This is moving from tactical to strategic. When we are dealing with strategy, the entire organization is what is going to make sure that we deliver better products, better services that are better designed, that have better user experiences. So what we are trying to do here is create metrics that are organizational metrics, ways the entire organization sees what this is. In the process, they will understand the contribution that UX makes into that. That's how we show our value. We are showing our value by absolutely expressing the progress we are making in terms of the entire organization. So there is no, excuse me, I get all choked up over this stuff. There is no us and them. There is just we, right? We as the organization are making this happen. Now, if we were running a marathon, the marathon that we run, we could measure in terms of completion, right? So our progress metrics could purely be completion metrics. So it could be that, this is, if the marathon is 26.4 miles, then this would be 13.2 miles. That's a good sort of halfway point there. And then maybe this is mile 1, and this is mile 7, and so this is mile 18, and this is mile 20. And we've just got these milestones that we've laid out for ourselves, and in a marathon, we can do this because we know the course, we know how many miles they are, we can measure all those things in advance, and we can understand where the milestones are. But unfortunately, for most projects, we don't have a clear path to finish like this, right? We don't have a clear understanding of where this is heading. Instead, right, where we have is something where we need to sort of think about what are the major accomplishments we have to do. So one way to frame this is this is running the race. But what about if we talk about training for the race? Our milestones for training for the race might be different. For instance, we might decide that one of the milestones is when we run our, a 1K race, or we run a 1K course, right? Another one might be when we run a 5K course. Another one might be when we run 10K. Another one might be when we run 30 miles in a week, over the period of a week, right? And this is our training protocol. And we don't actually know the specific distance in time between these objectives. It's going to be when it's going to be. But we can tell that we're getting closer to that because we can see that we started with a 1K, and now we're up to being able to run 2K. Now we can run 3K. Now we can run 4K. Wow, we just did 5K, right? And we get to the finish line by achieving each of these accomplishments. And I think for most of us, for what we're doing, the training model is going to work better than the running model. That we have to set these up as accomplishments, things we've never done before, in order to know how close we are to the finish line. So we have to figure out, well, what are all the accomplishments we're going to have in order to get to that moment? And that's how we're going to create these. But there's no rules about this, right? If you can do the running model of basing it on a percentage of how far you've gotten, by all means, do that. That can work. But this idea of having achievements that we're going to accomplish, and knowing what those are, knowing what those be, and again, comes from experience. And that process is going to get us there. And this is, by the way, where Agile comes in, because really what people are going to want to know is the ability to predict when we're going to achieve the next milestone. And that's what Agile is really for. Agile, we think of it as a delivery tool, but it's not a delivery tool. What Agile is for is being able to accurately when we are going to deliver. We use Agile as a tool for estimation. The purpose of each sprint is to have a time-boxed activity whereby at the beginning of the sprint, we say, this is what we think we're going to accomplish during the sprint. And at the end of the sprint, we say, did we accomplish it or not? And if we didn't accomplish it, then the purpose of the sprint was to help us understand why it didn't happen the way we thought it did, so that for the next sprint, we can get better at predicting what we will get done. And the goal is, with each sprint, to get our prediction skills to be better. Every sprint has a cadence. You start with predicting what you think you'll get done, you do the work, and then at the end, did we get it done? That's what the retrospective is supposed to be for. And as we go through this, we are focused on understanding how to predict better. So our ability to identify these milestones is key. And what we want to do as we're sort of defining these things out is we want to talk about them in terms of demonstration of some sort of new capability, right? We want to put this in a framework of growth, because what this really is about, because we've created this UX outcome that is doing something that the organization's never done before. We want to talk about how we're getting the organization better and better and better at doing this thing. And so we want to focus in terms of growth. So it's more like the training model of, hey, I never ran before, and today I ran 1K. Hey, I've only been running for a couple months, and today I ran 5K. Hey, I've only been doing this for a little while, and now I've gotten up to 10K, right? Each time that we are demonstrating that we've achieved something, we're showing that we are now better than we were before. And the other thing that's key is we want to make sure that, because we are UX people, and the U in UX is a user, this is human focused, not business focused. We are not business experience people. There's lots of other people in the organization who focus on the business. We are focused on the user. So when we frame the lens we want to look through is a human focused lens. We want to look at this, all of the things. So when somebody says, well, we want to increase retention, that's why we have an outcome, right? If we improve retention by 10%, how does a human benefit, right? What is it, if we have 10% more people staying with our service, what are they getting from our service? What do we need to give them to get them to stay with our service, right? We want to focus these milestones on the human side of it. What are we delivering that makes people's lives better? So the example I've been using all week is an insurance benefit application, right? You're applying for health insurance as a new employee in a company. And the old way of doing this was to do this through paper forms, but now we're going to give you an online application product that will do this. So when we state the milestone, one of our milestones might be, hey, we just accepted the first employee entered insurance application through our product. That's the milestone. Hey, we got data through the product. Boom. But it's human focused because it's about the employee. We got an employee's insurance application, and we use that lens to keep this going. Of course, we have to be able to explain how that human focused element maps into the business things that everybody's talking about. But if we do the outcomes right, if we do the success metrics right, everyone will be clear on that by the time we get to progress metrics. They will see the benefit. We shouldn't have to keep explaining. If we find ourselves when we're reporting progress metrics having to explain this over and over again, how it's helpful to the business, we didn't set up the success metrics and the UX outcome right. Right. By the time we get here, this should be a given for everybody who's involved. They should understand how this is good for the business. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create party moments. Party moments are these, we call them party moments because the rule of thumb is we have to know when to break out the booze, right? When are we going to have a party that says we've achieved each thing? So like the success metric, where we're going to have a big party, we want to have medium-sized parties for each progress metric. And so as we lay out the progress metrics, we want to have a clear understanding as to what the party moment is. And we want to define that up front so that everybody's clear, right? You know, if we were driving from Boston to Florida to get to Disney, you know, checking into the hotel in New Jersey is our party moment. That's how we know that we have made where we need to be tonight. And we can break out some booze and celebrate the travel so far. Probably shouldn't give it to the kids, but that's a different story. Okay, so I want to remind us of something that's really important because we have to have our language right here. The key thing that we have to keep straight is when we use terminology, what we're talking about. So we're talking here about a measure, right? And a measure is an observable quantity of something state, you know, in this case, the thing we're building, right? So this is key. When we can see it actually change its quantity, that's a measure, or not change its quantity, right? We can actually see it. Now, in the case of the success metric, it's, you know, no and then yes. But in the case of progress metrics, we may have a different set of quantities that we're looking at the state of each of these things. Metrics are the measures that we choose to track, right? So when I use the word metrics, I am talking about measures that we're tracking versus all the measures that we're not tracking. There's so many measures, we're not tracking all of them, right? We can measure the number of lines of code that go into the app, but we're not going to track that because it's not an important measure for us, right? So that is a measure. Now, people use the term analytics, and the way I use it is this is something that these are measures that computers can track. And I'm going to re-emphasize what I said yesterday. Progress metrics may not be things that computers can track. They don't have to be things that computers can track. It's nice if they are, but we're not gonna eliminate the measure from our pool of what we're going to track just because we can't figure out how to get a computer to measure it. That's limiting us when we do that. And we don't want to make the mistake that so many UX people make, which is they look at the computers they have, they figure out what applications they have, whether they have Google Analytics or Adobe Insights or Hotjar or Crazy Egg, and they say, what can all those things measure? And then they only use those analytics. That's not going to get us strategy here. That's not going to work. So get that out of your head. If you were thinking you were going to go down that road, just, no, we're not doing that. Sorry. For today, I want to introduce, though I sort of introduced it a little yesterday, but I want to reintroduce KPIs. Now, KPIs have an old definition And the old definition is basically what's called a key performance indicator. And this is a leading indicator for an important business performance metric. So in other words, it is something that happens in order for something else to happen. So for example, we can use the pipeline for sales as KPIs for performance indicators, because if sales calls suddenly drops, we can predict that proposals are going to drop, that book sales are going to drop. So we can use these things. But for a lot of what we do in UX, we don't have these types of key performance indicators. They don't exist. And so instead, the sort of new definition that everybody uses here, when they mean KPIs, they don't mean a performance indicator that predicts some other thing that's going to happen. What they mean is it's an important metric. And so when somebody says, what are your KPIs? What they're really saying of all the metrics you could have, which are the ones that we care about for this thing? And most of our KPIs are going to be progress metrics. That's what we're going to use. They might be problem value metrics that we're going to talk about tomorrow, but it's going to be one of these or the other. Then the other thing I wanted to talk about were OKRs. OKRs stand for objectives and key results. It's actually OKR. So it's objective and key results. And objectives, depending on whose version of OKRs you do, most of the time, objectives are supposed to be sort of reach goals that are a bit arbitrary, right? They're like sales is picking $250 million that they're going to have. So these are sort of arbitrary reach goals, and so these it's easy to use success metrics. So your objective would be a success metric. And the key results, these are going to be the progress metrics. OKRs always happen over a period of time. So you have OKRs for this quarter. When you have an OKR for this quarter, it's the progress metrics you expect during this quarter. And you'll use those, you'll tell people those are our key results. Now, there are times where the success metric is just too far out, and people are going to push back on an OKR with a 5-year success metric because it doesn't change ever. So in that case, what you may do is you may look at high-level progress metrics. What could you get done in the next couple quarters? And then use progress metrics underneath that for your key results. So that's the sort of key here is having all of that there. Now I've put in the notes a bunch of progress metrics for this new insurance onboarding product, right? The getting employees to use an app instead of having the HR people data entry paper forms, right? So I've laid a bunch of these out, and these are in the mostly in the accomplishment form, but you'll see, so that's the training thing, right? It's what are the accomplishments we have to have as an organization? Oops, I forgot to change my camera. That's not the button I wanted to press. I want to press this button. Fitz's Law. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so at the bottom of the of this, I've got a bunch of accomplishments. So for example, I've got a discovery phase, which is really the accomplishment is we as an organization now understand what the new employee onboarding experience is at a bunch of key clients. I've picked 10 key clients, and we're going to go and we're going to meet them and we're going to see how they onboard new employees. We're going to sit through the process, and we're going to make sure that everybody on the team who's working on this has a shared understanding of what a client does and the frustrations clients have and the frustrations that employees have. We're going to take that apart. This is a discovery phase. And so the party moment is that we are convinced that everybody on the team has an understanding of what we saw at each of these 10 key clients. And who the team is, we're going to make that up, right? We're going to decide that includes product and development and everybody who's going to contribute to this. And they understand this. What we do in that phase, that's not defined here. We're just, the party moment is everybody now has an understanding for these 10 key clients. And then the second milestone is that we're going to build some sort of prototype based on what we learned, and that we're able to demonstrate that prototype working to key stakeholders, showing how it addresses all the issues that came up in the discovery phase. That's our party moment. And then the third milestone is that we're going to go back to those key clients who are pilots for our new app, and we're going to meet with them, and we're going to actually walk through and simulate using the prototype how they would onboard their employees, and actually go through a process where we get feedback from them through the simulation and iterate over the design until we get to a point where we've met with every client and we've got feedback and we now know what we need to build. And then we're going to actually implement and test this thing. And the party moment for that is we're going to use it internally in our own organization. We're going to start onboarding new employees with our own tool. And then our next one is more of the running model of this, which is the equivalent of getting to our first 1K, right? So this is receiving our first application from a key client's employee, right? The first time somebody applies for insurance using this thing, that's our party moment. The second party moment after that is that we've gotten it from employees at each of the 10 clients that we're working with. And then the next one is the party moment is that a key client has completely switched to using this and they're no longer using paper forms. And then the next one is that a non-key client, someone who wasn't in that original 10 client group, has switched and they're not using paper forms. And we just keep building on that. And that's how we do this, right? Again, this isn't rocket science. We know this. NASA's a client. They're very specific about these things. This is not rocket science. But it is hard. It's not easy. And it's a collaborative thing, right? You won't be able to do this by yourself for your entire organization and just get it bought in. You're going to need to actually make this work. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. There's homework today. The homework today is a little trickier than the homework of the past few days, because you're really going to have to think about the project that you're working on and what these things are, right? There's a reason this homework just keeps getting harder and harder and harder. And so you're going to need to do that. Like the last 2 days, there's a Google Doc. There's also a Word doc. You can download the homework and give it a try. I highly recommend you try it. I also highly recommend that you go and do the previous day's homework if you haven't done it, because this will not be any easier if you just try and do today's homework without setting up your success metric and without setting up your UX outcomes. So you want to start at the beginning and go through every day's homework to get to this, and then post the homework, and we'll talk about it in the implementation and inspiration session tomorrow. And so that's key. That is going to happen at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. And so please, by all means, try to be there. If you can't be there, that's okay. If you want us to call on you to talk about your homework, put the hashtag please review into your submission, put it in the comment when you upload your submission or paste it in, and that way we'll know that you'll be there and we'll call on you, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about your challenges. We'll talk about what made it hard, and we'll talk about tips to make it easier. Okay. The other thing I wanted to tell you is so we're halfway through. We've now made it halfway through the program. We've got 2 more days left, and then we're going to have a bunch of bonus sessions. Tomorrow's topic at this hour is going to be on problem value metrics. So these are the other things that may end up in your OKRs and key results. These are metrics that you can use to really show why UX is valuable, because it measures the cost of not doing UX. It measures the value of problems that are caused by not making your products have a great user experience. So you really want to come to that. You want to bring your key stakeholders. That's key. And then on Friday, we're going to talk about how we're going to put all this together, getting the executive commitment to having a better user experience in all your products and services. And we're going to talk about how all of this comes together, how we're going to pick our instruments, how we're going to sell this to the senior leadership, all of those things. And tomorrow I'll also have news about the bonus sessions, when they'll be and who they'll be, but I'll give you a hint. We've got 2 guest speakers I'm very excited about. We're going to have Josh Seiden come in and talk about outcomes. And we're going to have Amy Jo Kim come in and talk about her mastery progress, which you can use for progress metrics. So there'll be more details on this tomorrow. Look for an email and come to the session, and I'll tell you more about it. There will be preparation work you'll need to do for each of these. For Josh, there'll be an article, and I think there's going to be a video to watch for Amy Jo's, so that you can have questions. We can jump in and get questions right away. So keep an eye on that, and we'll have the schedule and everything starting tomorrow. We're just putting together the final details today. Okay. Wow, I went really long on this. Miss Jessica, did we happen to get any questions while I was blabbering on all that time?
Hi, Jared. Yeah, we did get a lot of questions. Thank you, folks. We'll get to as many as we can. I wanted to go to Hrog Palan, and Hrog, please let us know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Hrog posted a question very early on in the session about how this scales at the enterprise level. So Hrog says, if you're on a small company working on a few products, it's feasible to implement these types of metrics. But what if you're at an enterprise corporation, for example, 200 or more products with 5,000 to 6,000 people? How do you scale this all up and generalize across your portfolio?
Oh, Hrog, that's a great question. Are you here?
I am.
So how do we say your name?
Hrag.
Hrag.
Yeah, pretty close.
Oh, Hrag. Is the H said or is it silent?
No, you pronounce it.
Oh, okay. Hrag. I've never heard this name before. Thank you very much for helping me learn to say that.
Of course.
So can you say a little bit more about your question?
Yeah, so I can understand how this approach would fit well to, I guess, develop UX metrics for success when you're focusing on smaller projects or in a smaller company. But one of the things you mentioned is whenever you want leader buy-in or you want people to care about these UX metrics at a higher level, what they're interested is in a standardized process, right? So how can we get some metrics that we can
That supposition, I think I would challenge from that beginning. They don't succeed if we have a standardized process. A standardized process only helps us if it produces improvements.
Sorry, I may have misspoken. Not a standardized process, but rather metrics that they can look to in order to make comparisons about UX success across products, right? So
Sure.
in a lot of the stuff that you've been explaining, sometimes the goals or the metrics for success, the goalposts can differ based on the product or the context, right? So what can we develop, or what kind of metrics can we use to kind of help with standardization, where we can scale this up and maintain the same quality and standard across portfolios or an organization?
Yeah, I'm going to push back on this idea that standardization is a goal. Standardization at best is a tool, and it's only a tool in the context where you want to have uniform results. But we don't want to have uniform results, because the things we are doing are uniquely different because humans are involved, right? My wife has a T-shirt that just says "Because humans." The standardization is a Taylorism model. It's a factory model, right? Every product that comes off the line needs to be identical in quality to every other product that comes off the line. So the notion of setting standards implies that we are producing uniform things, and that's the fastest path to mediocrity. If we talk to HR, if they try and hire a standard employee, they will fail. Right? There are many parts of the business that doesn't work for standardization. And so let's take the sales funnel that I gave you. The sales funnel I gave you is a perfect sales funnel for certain types of sales, and it will fail miserably for other types of sales. So, for example, if your sales are not a single purchase of a product, but instead is a self-service model, that funnel falls apart. If the sales is an ongoing support mechanism where you have an established relationship, let's say you sell food supplies to restaurants, right? That sale, it's not a single proposal and they say yes and they approve it and they make one purchase and they're done. That sales model will fail. And so you have to be very careful on standardizing. It will not get you the results you want. Instead, there are probably patterns that we can use as we develop things. And if you have the model that you mentioned, which is 200 products, 5,000 to 6,000 people, chances are those people are organized into possibly divisions or product lines, and that those products are grouped, and that those products have their own unique niches. In those cases, you may be able to look at this from the perspective of each of those niches. But I guarantee you that if you tell general managers that you are going to standardize products across their thing, you basically eliminate what makes their product unique for their niche.
So, but then how do you facilitate comparisons though? So you mentioned sales department and they compare their revenues. How would product teams compare the UX experience that they offer with their peers?
The way they compare their revenue is they establish a goal. So each division has their own success metric. And within that, chances are each product has their own success metric. And within that, it's possible that every region has their own success metric. And they measure progress based on those things. And the way they're going to sell and the context of their sell. You don't want standards in these cases. We don't want to measure people on a standardized metric. This is what SAT tests do, and this is why schools are dropping them, because they don't work, right? This is not human-centered.
Yes.
And so instead, to scale, what we need to convince people that this works, and then build it up one capability at a time. So chances are in a large organization, you're not going to come up with the organizational wide UX outcome in your first shot. You're going to work with a particular division or a leader, someone at a lower level who, if you can show that you were able to solve problems for them, others will get very envious and want to do this for their division. And now we start to grow our capability, and we tackle each one as if it's a new problem, trying to understand if we can borrow from the practices we used elsewhere, or if we have to innovate and create something that solves new problems because we've never done this before. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And so I'm going to refrain from my NPS question because you gave me a preview of what your answer would be.
Yeah, NPS is just a fast path to mediocrity.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jared. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. We've hit the top of the hour, but we're going to stick around for another 15 minutes. So if you have questions, please stick around. Jess is going to answer them. We'll be here. And if you have to go because, you know, the world needs you, I completely understand. We won't judge you for that. However, come back and watch the video, the last 15 minutes, because I'm sure there's going to be something really good here. I know someone's going to ask me about NPS. So we'll make it happen, and we'll go from there. Miss Jessica, what's our next question?
Hi, Jared. Yeah, I'd like to go to Jess Kieran Kang. And Jess Kieran, please let us know if we are pronouncing your name correctly. Jess Kieran says, how do you influence a change in the OKRs if they are not easy to track progress metrics?
Yeah, Jess Kieran, if you're still here, can you say a little bit more about this?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Are we pronouncing your name right?
You are. You can call me Jess, but yes, it's Jess. You did great.
Okay. Hi, Jess.
So yeah, my question was, you're new to a company or you're new to that leadership space, and you notice the goals that you have, or the OKRs that are stated, are not easy to progress because they're not true OKRs potentially. So, you know, when you're trying to influence a change and you're trying to track progress or create progress metrics, how would you influence that without, you know, losing friends, and you want to influence it with, you know, in a positive environment? So what recommendations would you have to, I mean, you've answered some of that in your previous response, but yes.
Well, so the first thing that comes to mind is that there's that moment in every reality TV show where someone is talking to the camera and they say, "I'm not here to make friends," right? So part of it is you're not really there to make friends. I mean, you have to work with these people and you have to be professional but we're not here to make friends. We're here to accomplish something. And so this is where I start, right? When I'm running into folks who I've already decided that their goal is X, right? Our goal is to increase adoption by 10%. Is that sort of like the OKRs that your hypothetical case might be dealing with?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're going to increase adoption by 10%, the question that I have for folks is, okay, let's say we do that. How in the process of doing that are we making somebody's life better? Right? And the first few times I ask that question, I'm going to get a deer in the headlights stare, because no one's ever asked that before and they've never thought about it. They just know they have to increase adoption by 10%. And remember that number, 10%, it was arbitrary. And the fact that they picked increasing adoption, that was actually sort of random, right? None of this, there's no law that says that by the end of the quarter, we have to increase adoption by 10%. This is not something that the government has enforced, right? It is purely something we picked because we think we can attain it. But if we're going to get people to adopt this, it has to have value. And if we're going to get people to understand the value, we have to explain it to them. And if we can't explain how we're going to make somebody's life better, how are we going to communicate value to our customers so that they stay with us and they pick up the product? Right? So we just need to sort of get them to that point. And it for some folks, it's a big mindset shift, right? To start thinking in these terms. So we have to just have patience. And so the process is, maybe what I will do is, after I've asked it a couple of times and gotten no results, I say, well, could it be this? Could it be that if we actually, we keep promising that if they buy our product, their new employee hiring process will go much smoother? Could we actually figure out what it means to make it smoother and make it smoother, right? There are probably clues all over the organization as to what they think they're doing when people adopt the product. Could we actually find out if we're doing that? And if we're not, could we then figure out what it would mean to do that? Because if we did that, we'd probably get that adoption increase. Support probably knows a lot of information about why people aren't adopting the product. If there's a sales team, they might know lots of information about why people aren't adopting the product. We can start by asking them, what would we need to do to get people to adopt the product? What improvement in their life would they need to have based on your job support or your job sales? And we can have that conversation. And then once we have some idea of what that UX outcome is, then we can establish a success metric, and then we can figure out progress metrics to get there. Does that make sense, Jazz?
Yeah, it does. It's really helpful. Thank you.
What's helpful about it, do you think?
I think questioning it and perhaps suggesting it. So asking a few times, and I think, and then suggesting it. I think, not just like having an outcome yourself or having a suggestion or having ideas to move forward, and trying. I think that, yeah. Yeah,
in my experience, just asking and being okay with the fact that they don't know the answer yet, you have to let that happen. There's a process there, and it's okay if they don't know it. And we don't want to make them feel stupid or like, they're incompetent. It's just not something they thought about. And so to that end, I don't immediately make a suggestion. I wait a little while, because if I just come in and make a suggestion, they're going to be like, oh, I should have thought of that. I'm so stupid, right? We don't want them in that place. So we want them to be okay with this. And we almost want it to be like, we're figuring it out together. And if we can get them to figure it out at the same time we suggest it, then maybe they'll think that they helped coming up with that. And if that helps them, allows us to get to this moment where they feel like they're on a path of growth, we're winning. And so this is the key thing here. So we don't want to force this moment too much. And this moment happens a lot in my work. So I'm going to guess it's going to happen in your work occasionally. So we don't want to force it. We want to support them through this, because once they get there, we're going to start picking up speed amazingly. How's that sound, Jazz?
Yeah, I would love that. Yes, I'm going to give it a go.
We're there. We're supporting you. By the way, these are the things we talk about in our UX Strategy Leaders program. So this is this is our paid program. The thing that people pay for us to do so that we can then come and do these things for free for you. And so part of this week is to basically show you the type of support that we give folks during the 24-week program. If that's something you're interested in, and I'll be talking more about that program tomorrow, so I'll give you more information about it. But if that program is something you might be interested in, Leslie and Summer are here. Reach out to them. they will, we're actually doing some closed door sessions later this week and early next week where we can answer your questions, find out if the program is right for you. So by all means, if this type of support is support you'd like to have every week with me, working with you to figure out what's the best way to tackle this stuff, that's what we're going to talk about in these closed door sessions. So you can find out more about it. So reach out to Leslie. Okay, Jess, I think we have time for at least one more question.
Yes, I'd like to go to Mach Hardevald. And
You're not picking the easy names today.
I am not. And I looked up how to pronounce your name, Mach, so hopefully this is correct. If it's not, please let us know. So in the example, Mach says, in the example, the progress metrics are about the number of users that are using the product, but it doesn't say anything about the quality of the product. So is this really UX success?
Oh, that's fantastic. Mach, are you here?
Yes, I am. The name is Maartje.
Marta. Okay.
Yeah,
so you pronounce the E at the end.
Yeah. It's difficult in English, but Maartje.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like Marge, M-A-R-G-E.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
yes,
Marta.
it is. Yeah.
Okay. So are you from Denmark, maybe?
No, Netherlands.
Netherlands. Damn it. I always get those two confused. Okay.
They're quite different.
They're very different. So they are very different. And every time I confuse them, I am told how different they are. No matter which one I get, if I'm talking to Danish folks or if I'm talking to Dutch folks, Anyways, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit more about where you're coming from on this question.
Well, in the case, perhaps it might be interesting to see how many users the product has. But I'm working at a railway company, creating products for our employees. My colleagues, they are using the product. They have to use the product. So when I get it's easy for me to get 100% of the users because they have to use the product. But when am I successful in UX?
Right. So remember, we started everything with our UX outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And our UX outcome asked the question, if we do a great job, how do we make someone's life better? So you said you're working on railway. So is it like logistics planning for railways? What's the product?
It's for the all different kinds of products.
Give me one.
Maintenance plans.
Maintenance plans. Okay. So the primary users there are like maintenance supervisors or the repair people themselves, the technicians?
No, the maintenance engineers thinking up of the maintenance plan.
Oh, I see. Okay. Maintenance engineers. Okay. So if we do a great job on this maintenance engineering product, how do we get the maintenance engineers, how do we make their life better? So we're going to need to do some work. And so in your case, you're absolutely right. There's probably some quality issues, quality of their life issues, right? Things that make them frustrated, things that slow down their work, things that cost, that create problems down the line because they made a mistake or they didn't clearly put the plan together and then someone doesn't know how to read it, right? There are things, and you will find those things out. And those are going to be part of your success metrics. Those are going to be your progress metrics. I didn't do those in the example so much because in order to do that, I'd have to explain so much backstory that it would take time. But in your space, because everybody around you needs to understand what a maintenance engineer does and what a maintenance plan is and what is a good maintenance plan and what is a bad maintenance plan, you're going to be explaining that. You're going to have shared understanding of that. This is going to be part of the common language if it's not already. And you're absolutely right. If we cut corners and we get more plans done, we may be making worse plans that have downstream problems that create, accidents. So we're talking here about balancing time and quality. And that's going to be part of your success metrics. They just weren't part of my examples. And I'll try to work on examples for the future, which show more of that. It's just really hard to do with our compressed conversation time here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah,
Because it's all about making somebody's life better, right?
Yeah.
And it may not be the maintenance person whose life is better. Are these railways passenger and freight, or just passenger?
Just passengers.
Just passengers. Okay. So it could be that the people whose lives you're making better are the passengers. Less downtime, less late trains. Though trains in the Netherlands are never late.
You shouldn't ask the Dutch.
I was just so amazed. I was in the Netherlands in the before times, before I was there last year, or the year before last, and we took the train from Amsterdam to Utrecht. Such a beautiful train ride, and everything runs like clockwork. I'm so impressed. So my perception as an American is your trains are never late, but I'm sure.
Main complaint in Holland is trains not being on time.
Okay, so that's so the improvement is going to be more on time trains, right? And you're gonna at least on time due to maintenance, right? Because weather is a separate thing. But maintenance is fewer delays for maintenance and so because or mechanical issues, things like that. So because of that, that's going to be all of your metrics, your outcomes, everything's probably going to be based off that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's quite a lot of steps in between what these users are doing and the end step.
But you need to understand that your bigger UX outcomes are going to talk to all of those things.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Because, it's the butterfly effect. What happens over here triggers things over there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So this is our strategy. This is how it works. Okay.
Yes.
Did I get there for you, Marcia?
Yeah, you did help me. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody, we have come to the end of our time. Thank you so much. I want to see you at tomorrow's session. I would love to see your homework. I would love to see you at the implementation and inspiration session in the morning. And if you're interested in our UX strategy program, reach out to Leslie, reach out to Summer. We're happy to have a conversation with you about it to see if it's right for you. And then, of course, between now and the next time we get together, please wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, and let's keep the trains on time. We'll see you soon. Take care.